Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our work session for the Board of Education. We have lots of friends around the table, so I'm going to, first of all, give an opportunity for them to introduce themselves. So we'll do the awkward pass the mic.
Good evening, Matt Reynolds from the Assessment Office.
Scott Smith, Chief Financial Officer.
Thomas Tucker, Superintendent.
Stacy Rader, Communications Officer.
Amanda Thompson, Chief Human Resources Officer.
Gotham City, Chief Technology Officer.
Mary Clemish, General Counsel.
Nancy Ingalls, Personalized Learning Officer.
Rich Cosgrove, Chief Operations Officer.
Rich Payne, Director of Safety and Security.
Rich Lemieux, Anne-Marie Lemieux, School Board. I'm just going with
Christina Chancho Shore, School Board.
Anthony Graziano, School Board.
Krista Holtzman, School Board.
Kevin Yuwalung, School Board.
Wendy Vogel, School Board.
And David Ray, Board of Education President. Want to just welcome our audience of two people, as well as those of you that may be live streaming today. We typically break out in work sessions just to be able to have an opportunity for informal conversations to get us off the dais and really just to engage in conversation. And so the topic of tonight really is to take a look at the sub-ins that the Board of Education has prioritized. And I'm just going to read those real quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tucker. So we really said that these three right now are the ones that we feel like are the most critical for us to monitor for the remainder of the year. Number one, quality educators and staff have been recruited, developed, supported, retained, and celebrated. Number two, a focused level of teamwork and professional development is ongoing among district employees, community, and law enforcement agencies to ensure the physical safety of students, district employees, and visitors. And the third one, academic expectations are clearly articulated and supported with an appropriate curriculum that includes content, scope, and sequence. As a Board of Education, we certainly really subscribe to a governance policy kind of model in which we feel it's up to us to define the what, and then we turn it over to staff to define the how. And so tonight really is for us just to have an opportunity for those of you that are around the table. And first of all, I want to pause and just say thank you for the role that all of you play in our district. Oftentimes we don't always realize there's these behind the scenes people that are doing great things for our kids. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight and all the work you do. But tonight really is for all of you to have an opportunity just to converse with us, to see if you're clear in terms of what our what is. And we're just going to give you an opportunity to engage us in questions, conversations, or thoughts about those prioritized sub-end statements. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Tucker.
Thank you, President Ray, and all of our directors. What a great opportunity for us as a cabinet to expand upon the sub-ends, the end goals that our Board of Education and with input from the community have been working on for quite some time. This is our opportunity to make sure that we are hearing what the board and the community have articulated, and it's our opportunity tonight to speak in very general terms. As you know, this is a draft document, and this is our first blush at articulating how we're going to go about accomplishing the three sub-ends. And as everyone around here knows, the board sub-ends, the 5 board goals, will ultimately be the anchor for the strategic planning process. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in general tonight, the strategic planning process. We're very pleased with the consultant group that will help lead that effort. But I will now turn the mic over to my colleagues, and each one of us will jump in as much as we can, given the fact that we only have one microphone. And you'll notice under each or above each bulleted point, we have a key person there to speak, but you will certainly hear other folks jump in and articulate to the board in terms of what we have in mind in terms of accomplishing these sub-ends. So we'll go ahead, start with sub-end. The first one, 2A, quality educators and staff have been recruited, developed, supported, retained, and celebrated. Recruitment, Amanda.
Good afternoon/evening to you. Thank you for the opportunity to share of some of our current practices and goals in these areas. So first of all, in terms of recruitment, we recruit all the time, both informally and formally. In fact, we were just sharing, having conversations with individuals out and about in the community who are very interested in coming to Douglas County. So it's important that we have our talking points and messaging down in a manner that truly reflects our mission, our vision, and the great things that we do here in Douglas County. Some of the things that we are working on is to develop and broaden our educator pipeline, both nationally and locally. For example, hosting this year's state job fair. We're really thrilled to host here at Highlands Ranch High School the CASPA Job Fair, and also partner with larger associations such as American Association for Educators, and they're called AAEE, and that's where we can partner with universities and colleges and school districts across the nation to recruit and create some pipelines. Additionally, we're reviewing and looking at hosting a student-teacher interview fair here in our own district. That's coming this spring. And then in terms of creating additional pathways to recruit other critical staff, we're hosting a classified job fair late spring, Nancy? Late spring into early summer to help recruit and attract our future classified staff members, whether that be transportation, paraeducators, to name a few. In terms of branding, we continue to work and review our district branding in terms of how we represent who we are as a district out there in the community with our recruitment efforts. We have recently revised our brochure to reflect our new great superintendent's messaging and also some of our upcoming goals as a district in relation to meeting our student needs and supporting our educators and staff. We're also doing so with brochures and banners, and we'd be happy to share that with you at some point as well. In terms of development, so in partnership with Matt, we know it's important to develop the staff that we have, whether that be through increasing teacher knowledge and craft around content, pedagogy, and other needed skills, or culturally relevant instructional practices in order to ultimately impact student achievement in a positive way. We also want to continue to provide coaching and district support for other staff members, our classified admin pro-tech staff members, through reviewing what their needs are and reviewing their evaluation needs and ensuring that we're developing their craft as well. Matt, anything else you want to add?
So this is actually a really great tie-in with some of the work that we've seen. The Special Education Task Force, we saw one of the themes was professional development, and going down that line of being able to meet people with where their needs are for professional development. That fits in this category. I mean, although we're speaking of it as an HR consideration, but the development, using the information that we've collected through that task force is going to be impactful. And those of you that sat in on the UIP development saw that as one of the major improvement strategies, is really to focus in on the development aspect and implementing those opportunities for folks to really get the professional development that they need. One of the recurring themes is social emotional learning, and that'll be something that you'll see throughout.
To continue to grow is developing an administrator leadership academy for new or aspiring administrators in order to continue to grow our administrator pipeline here in Douglas County. In terms of supporting our staff, there are many ways that we can continue to do that and grow in that area. And one is to continue our conversations around culture and climate of our district, of our schools, of our departments, and engage with our staff, whether that be through employee council or a classified mentor team or principal cabinet, in ways that we can listen, learn, and support growing our school climate so that our staff, according to our board end goals, are continuing to feel supported. So ultimately, our kids are the most positively impacted. we'll utilize our current systems and then develop some future systems for that. Next is, we all know it's really important to provide wellness programs that are robust and comprehensive, including in our benefit realm, continuing to host different wellness events. I had the opportunity to attend one in the fall over at the, I'm trying to think of where it is, over at one of our outdoor areas, and it was fabulous to see the staff involvement and the community involvement in that. So I think it's really important we continue to offer wellness events for our employees. And as you know, we do have a pretty robust employee assistance program, but we're always looking for opportunities to continue to meet the needs of our employees. We also know it's important that we have access to various on-the-job trainings, whether that's new for our new paraeducators coming in, to have that pre-job training, or if we see that a need comes up that we need to develop one, we will. And we know that also, and Gautam, feel free to jump in, it's important that all of our employees have access to up-to-date technology so that they can meet the needs of their department, their employees, and our students.
Yeah, just very quickly, with the bond MLO funding available to us, we are structurally working through the entire sort of fleet of technology that's available in buildings for staff and students to ensure that they have stuff, technology, and tools which can help support the work they do in buildings.
Okay, Dr. Tucker, if they have a quick question, would you rather wait till the presentation's finished? Hold the questions, make sure we go through this. Okay.
Around retention, we are also currently working with our building administrators. In fact, we have an upcoming breakout session around getting their input on needs of retention, and also looking at how we go about reviewing, selecting, attracting quality educators or other employees to our buildings and departments. So we're providing a training coming up to help them ensure that they have the support they need around reviewing applications, resumes, performing sound hiring practices, interview practices to ensure we're selecting the very best individuals. And then, of course, we are currently and will continue to review and enhance our benefit and compensation structures, as we know that those are very important factors in retaining our employees. Matt, did you want to? Sorry, we're
keep my steps in. It'll be good. So one of the aspects that we have in Douglas County is we have our own evaluation system for teachers and for administrators. And so as an organization, we're allowed the opportunity to be able to do a process of improvement with that. We have a site and lead focus group that spends a whole lot of time looking at those instruments and revising those instruments to be able to really reflect what we're looking for in terms of quality staff, and gather that feedback. And so that's been one thing that's been an ongoing process and will continue to be an ongoing process in the future.
Before we move to how we're going to celebrate and show a great level of appreciation for our staff, I want to talk a little bit about retention of staff. And Amanda talked about reviewing and enhancing our benefit and compensation structures. And you've heard me say this quite a bit in many, many public sessions, that we are committed, the board certainly is committed in passing a resolution a while back to that. But that's a system that's going to take some time. Let's just be honest, the entire compensation system was destroyed. And I use the verb destroyed not lightly. It's been 7 years. Almost 7 years, and we need to have these tough conversations, and they're not good conversations to have, but it's been several years now since we've even kept track of transcripts. So we're looking at a comprehensive compensation structure. You know, do we look at, which I think is important, whether someone has a degree, which I think is important. Certification, I think that's important too. Proper continuing education, that's important. Then, of course, performance is the most important ingredient here, but it's going to take a while for us to gather all those things. But we're extremely happy. One avenue we're using to improve our compensation structure is our employee council. Under Amanda's leadership and Mary Chesler in HR, we've expanded the employee council. Folks should know who's on the council. Each building, each area, every area is represented by staff in all of our different groups, all of our different employee groups. And so the expansion of the council and some of their enhanced roles certainly will do wonders. And we're also committed to having some breakout sessions and using some of the bright minds there to look at some really proven compensation structures as well.
Also in relation to that, our next employee council meeting will be next week, and so we're excited to add our new members, of which we added several teachers that are now representative of each of our regions. So we're really excited to continue that work and expand our group, and then also partner with experts in compensation, in the compensation field. So we'll be engaging with professionals and experts in looking at new systems and helping us to do that work using some data across the Front Range in terms of where other districts are at and then where we need to be and what options we have for revising our compensation system.
And the communications department has the honor, as I think it's one of the best parts of the job, of helping HR recognize our amazing schools and our amazing staff. Case in point will be the board recs that we have tonight and have at the beginning of each board meeting, finding students as well as staff members that have done great things, have gone above and beyond, have won awards, you name it, and bringing them in to be recognized by all of you. We also assist the Foundation for Douglas County Schools with implementation of the Apple Awards, which is also very important to our staff. And then we have something called the Rockstar Awards that you may or may not be familiar with. That goes out in our twice a month we send out. Is now called Insights, which was Think. It's our employee newsletter. And really any employee can nominate another employee for a Rockstar Award. And it can be anything going above and beyond, helping somebody out. And it means a lot. We get about 10 to 15 submissions each month. We send out a card from the communications department thanking them for everything they do. And they get a nice water bottle. And we're actually moving to even nicer water bottle with a Rockstar logo on it so they can have that at their desk. So those are some of the ways. We also tell the stories of our schools and our staff, telling those good news stories, doing staff profiles and spotlights in our employee and external newsletters. We'll really amplify that during Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week in May. So I'm always reminding everybody, if you hear of a great story at a school, a staff member doing something wonderful, please let us know so that we can recognize them in one way or another.
And in terms of this particular item, we could go on in many, many ways in great detail of all the great things happening in each of our buildings and schools. So know that paired with some of the things that we shared this evening, there are celebrations happening daily amongst staffs in each of our great schools and departments. One thing that we also want to bring back is our Classified In-Service Day, which is around delivering a leadership message, recognizing our great staff of our classified ranks, and then providing them some professional development as well.
And we're also, we talk about, recognizing our staff members formally and informally, but anytime we have an opportunity to genuinely and sincerely recognize staff and appreciate staff, please do. Today was an informal opportunity to recognize our administrative assistants, and David and I stopped in, and we had, I don't know how the buildings operated because all the administrative assistants were here, and we had an opportunity to say hello. And I know each director has his or her feeder pattern, and I know you stop in informally to say hi. We have tremendous people here, and we want to continue doing both informal and formal recognitions. we're doing pretty good with time. So if there are any questions relative to this particular sub-in, we can go ahead and answer a few of those questions, then we'll get back to the second board sub-in. I think, Director, let me...
Oh, sorry. I know that we have in the past utilized different survey results, whether that be done at the state level. We'll also be want to have further discussion, but engage with school leadership and both informally and formally. So we're still developing that, but we are happy to engage with professionals in order to ensure we have a sound feedback model that we would implement and utilize. I don't have a lot of information in relation to that, but I would want to learn what we have done in the past and what has been effective, and then what our opportunities are to implement the very best process possible to gather the most authentic feedback.
So I can speak about the survey from the state. So as you all know, that we're participating in the off-year administration of the TLCC. This is an opportunity that's unique. Many districts across the state were really anxious about being able to possibly do this for an annual basis. So this will be our first foray into doing that, and we're going to see how it goes. A few different internal processes, but it's another great data set that we can look at in our off year. So instead of having an off year, it would be year over year. You're gathering data and looking at, how teachers' perception of climate and culture from a variety of different standpoints. So we're excited about that.
I'll play Phil Donahue, so I'll just walk around.
People listening. Amanda and Dr. Tucker, you mentioned the information there. You're trying to systematize hiring practices and assuring that our principals know common hiring practices. Will our leadership or principals and or employee council have a handbook or some directions that are specific to take these steps so it is less autonomous and a little bit more systemic?
We can certainly work toward that. And I know I have some examples that can help get us started in that area. We're starting with a training, so an in-person breakout session training at our next leadership team meeting, where we have some of our beloved in-district experts around recruitment and hiring to share some of those best practices, some of the same practices that have been shared at principal development classes, and so these are well-respected individuals in the field. We are happy to work towards something like that to ensure that we have some aligned practices, but I would want to partner with our school leadership as well.
One last comment on that. And also, directors, if you have any other questions that are not addressed tonight, please email them directly to me. Yes, we not only expanded employee council for greater representation, but also we want greater input from employee council. Whether it's helping us with a compensation structure or helping us celebrate the great work that goes on each and every day here in the district. Director Chancho-Shore, you raised a question about principals. We've focused very heavily on site-based management, which meant that principals did all their hiring, and we probably had 91 different HR organizations in each school. We want to continue to give our principals a great deal of latitude and flexibility in the hiring and retention process. But we also, as a district level, want to give them the resources that they need, because we know from school to school we don't have the same amount of resources. Okay, now with that said, we're going to go ahead on with sub-N number 3B2. A focused level of teamwork and professional development is ongoing among district employees, community, and law enforcement agencies to ensure the physical safety of students, district employees, and visitors. Operational safety, Rich Payne. No, that's not Rich Payne, but.
Good evening. Thank you. So some of the stuff that we've been doing consistently within the district is our focus on safety and security is to have a team concept. The team concept that is everybody from every person involved at the building level is part of a security team. And so for us to be able to make sure that we are making sure everybody's trained at least to the same level of the level that we can provide. We do have mandatory online trainings every year with what we use as the standard response protocol. That's the protocol that we use for lockdowns, lockouts, shelter in place, and evacuations. So the mandatory reportings are required. Every employee in the district is required to actually do an online training at the beginning of the school year, and so that's in place. Also, we have mandatory reporting, which is an issue that we've discussed throughout the years in the district. So what we did was we took that upon ourselves in the security department to go out and actually train and be able to, they also do that online, but we also go out and we additionally speak to every teacher, every employee at every school. We do live trainings to make sure that they have, if they want to ask a question, it's not just watching a video, that we can actually answer the questions live. Plus we do have pamphlets that we also have available if anybody has any questions that we also receive from the Sheriff's Department. We also work in conjunction with HR in reference to some of the other stuff. When we receive the time to go in and do the mandatory or the 1 hour live trainings, we make sure that we also partner with HR. So we'll go in and we'll also talk about respect at the workplace. We walk them really quick through the manual and we put up slides that show here are the numbers for everybody in each region. So if you have issues, we do explain to them, please go through your normal channels within the school first. And then if you feel that you're not being heard, then you can always reach out, and then here's the director in your area to make sure that you're, you can be heard and that you do have somebody that can help you out. So we partner with the HR for that, as well as also talking about stuff like adult sexual misconduct. And so we cover certain things in there just to put it on the radar to say, this is a no-no, this is appropriate touching, this is inappropriate touching. And so my 3 managers, myself, we go out and we hit every single school. We also do all the extra buildings, the support buildings in the district. So we try to reach out and we do nutrition services. And so I think we're now up to 8,600 employees, somewhere in there. And we're pretty close to actually doing a live training in front of every single employee in the district to make sure that we're sharing the message about security, and that everybody's part of a team when it comes to security. We also do all the online drills in the schools. So our on-site drills, what we do is we have a sign-up sheet. We'll do 4 trainings with the elementary schools. So 4 of us will go out in the morning, we'll do the trainings, and then that day we'll actually go and the 4 of us will be at every single school. And our goal there is to do the lockdown drill at the school to make sure that the teachers and everybody feel comfortable, that the kids feel comfortable, and that everybody's successful. And that's our goal, is to make sure that we're successful. We do not trick people. There's other districts that like to trick people and do this stuff. We don't do that. We're there to set them up for success, so we want to make sure that we're not scaring individuals. It's not by fear. We want them to be a partner with us, and that's the kind of approach that we take. And so we also go, we're available for the lockdown drills, any fire drills, any evacuation drills, and then we also do a couple schools get very innovative, and they do reunification drills at the same time. So there's a format that we have set up. We actually took it from Chris Zimmerman up at Cimarron. They line up the kids out in the field exactly like we would line them up if they had to get transported to another school. And so we're trying to keep that format across the district. So if we did have to bus kids to another location, that everybody's on the same page, and that way it's easier for us to set up a reunification. And if we've watched reunification things that have happened or heard of things in the past, like the Arapaho. There was a miscommunication all the way around, and so that's where we're also partnering with our communications department to make sure that we're getting information out to parents as quick as we can to make sure that everybody knows where their kids will be taken and stuff. And so we're working on a lot of that stuff on the backside when it comes to the communication team. We also, for our law enforcement partners, we have the YES program. The YES program, it's a proactive collaboration between law enforcement, schools, and the community to help build life skills for kids. And so we have officers that are out. This is actually a kind of a partnership with Nancy's folks. And what they do is the officers go out. It's a curriculum that's been approved. Our district is actually, I think, part of the building the curriculum, and they go out, the officers go out and they teach the program in the middle schools. And so it's a collaboration that we have with our officers and our local law enforcement officers throughout the community to make sure that we're reaching out to the kids as well. So emergency preparedness, we really focus on crisis communication. One of our big things is my dispatch center, we're the hub of information coming in, and we have to make sure that the information that comes in is that we have confirmed information before we send that out. And we all know that if we do not have confirmed information, it turns into a nightmare, and we're trying to play cleanup. And so sometimes we might get the information out within minutes. Sometimes it might 10 to 15 minutes for law enforcement to respond to us so we can get that confirmed information out. We have put up together, we have here, it says an effective and communication public address system. There's multiple ways that parents can sign up to make sure that they're getting the information, whether it's through text, through emails, through a roto dial, and all that stuff is a collaboration that we're working with communications. We have what's called a Slack channel, and our Slack channel, any incident that happens within the district, we quickly put that incident on the Slack channel. Communications is on that. Everybody knows what's going on, and that's our update. And so that's how we can get it the fastest without making phone calls to everybody. They're getting a digital transmission, like a text, and then that's how we're communicating to make sure that we're staying on top of everything. And we're also updating as well, and that affords communications to get that message out as quick as they can. And so we've streamlined it, and we think we have a pretty good system in place. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but we're dealing with carriers and stuff like that for cell phone services. We talking about for staffing, every single one of our schools under the Safe School Act in the state of Colorado, the legislation that's been put down or provided to us, we have to do the school safety framework, and that's all under what's called the National Incident Management System. So members at the school, every school has a CERT team, which is called a Crisis Emergency Response Team, that handle incidents that happen within their schools. So the stuff that is happening there, they're all FEMA certified. Every single member that's on the team actually has to take a FEMA course and get certified and maintain that certification. And if you're a building leader where you could be an incident commander in the structure, then you also have to take an additional course for administrators as well under the through the FEMA system. So we have our school resource officers is another partnership that we have, where we currently have one in every high school, and we do have a couple middle schools that share one. And so they'll share half-time, one of the resource officers, and then we also do have one middle school that actually has a full-time resource officer. And so working with our resource officers, it's enabled us to get information quick, have that officer on scene. If we have threats, any type of things that come in through our different communication systems, such as text-to-tip and safe-to-tell, that we do have somebody there at the school that can actually handle those. And then we do dispatch out our officers as well from within the district to also assist and help out if there's something going on there. We share all of our building plans. All of our building plans, everything is structured within all the county, all of our 4 law enforcement and also fire. And so they have pattern, they know exactly where our buildings are. We are in the process right now of updating how our camera system is monitored and covered with inside of buildings. Currently, it was done on data switches, and so we have like 1,400 cameras, and you look at a camera, when you pull it up, it'll just say like east, west, 125, and there's no rhyme or reason when you're trying to roll through it, because it was all built on a data switch in which room it's located in. Well, that doesn't help us, so we're restructuring all that to actually be numbered just like law enforcement, to help law enforcement. So everything's going to be structured on a command system on the same language. We're using a common language. And so since law enforcement has access to our cameras, eventually you can walk right through it, and any law enforcement officer can look at the camera system and also walk through it as well, because we're all using the same language. Our first school that we'll have up and running here, I would say in probably about 2 weeks, is going to be Southridge. So that's our first one. And then, the other things that we focus on in security is our procedures. We have our emergency management plans. Every school has one. We have one in the district. Our plans roll into the county, which roll into the state, and then also into the federal government if we had a disaster or something that took us all the way up to those levels. We just put in a new visitor registry system. Some of you guys may have heard of the Raptor system. And so every school now has the Raptor system. Thank you, Scott. So everybody gets to swipe their cards in, and so every visitor will be printed a badge, and that immediately checks that any individual that comes in right up against the registered sex offender database, and then that hit comes in, and then that way we can deal with that individual and say, ask them questions on what their status is. So just to be clear, just because somebody hits on that system, we have to clarify and confirm. And so their deal may not have anything to do with it. They're not allowed to be around children. And so we have to clarify that with them. And so most people that are on those lists, they do carry a document with them that says, here's my requirements and this is where I'm at. And then we usually confirm those through law enforcement as well. So we we do audits with all of our, we do audits with fire drills, all the safety drills that we do, and when it says managed classroom doors, that comes down to door hardware, the stuff that we have to make sure that we're checking door hardware so that we do have locking mechanisms and that everything is working. And then we do work in line with Mr. Crosgrove in reference to making sure that all of our stuff is up to date and that we have good stuff in place. Our evacuation plans and just making sure that we're getting information out to everybody. And of course, again, that's a collaboration that we have with communications, and is getting all that information out as quick as we can. If there's any questions, the schools are getting the letters out to the parents, and all that's coming from the main hub. So long as we're receiving that information, and then we're getting that information out as quick as we can. So.
Timekeeper, just say we've got about 15 to 20 minutes left.
So, directors, thank you very much. Physical security, as you know, is a key component of our capital improvement plan and master capital plan and our bond. Several years ago, our district hosted a national safety symposium with the National American Institute of Architects, Architects for the Learning Environment, Homeland Security, Secret Service, FEMA, and many others from the state and federal levels. And we basically looked at lessons learned and best practices. And our job is to implement the best practices based on evidence, and basically to create the safest possible environment, including items such as door hardware that supports International Building Code for fire, as well as lockout and lockdown. Electronic access control, line of sight, extremely important with line of sight. Down to the number of doors that are inset from the halls and how can we eliminate that to improve the line of sight. Security cameras, exterior entrance, play, and perimeter protection. And we know that in the general obligation bond, we had $3 million for charter school security and $12 million for security. All of those projects have been identified. They reflect the tier needs in the master capital plan, and they're all on schedule. In our first report for the Mill and Bond Oversight Committee, there will be an update, and we're actively tracking. To date, we don't release the types of specific projects we have, but in general, we have basically 20 different types of projects for the physical security at all of our schools. And we are on track and will be in budget to execute those. So basically, we identify, we track, and we will complete those projects.
And so very quickly, we feel cybersecurity is an extension to physical safety. The digital footprint for staff and students is just growing. For us to be able to empower them, train them, and give them tools so they can detect, manage, and hopefully respond to those threats would be sort of the key focus in this cyber safety portion of physical safety.
Okay, we'll use the next 10 minutes or so looking at the third board sub-in, and then we'll have enough time, hopefully, for about 5 minutes for questions. Sub-in goal 1B, academic expectations are clearly articulated and supported with an appropriate curriculum that includes content, scope, and sequence. Mr. Reynolds.
The timing for this sub-in really couldn't be much better. Last spring, the Colorado State Board approved new standards. And so the standards implementation timeline is a 3-year timeline from the time that they're approved to the time that full implementation occurs with state testing taking effect. So really this year it's about exploring these new standards, helping folks understand what the structure is, the new terminology, the new approach to these different standards, and how they map to previous standards to help people make those connections. So this year, we've engaged conversations with leaders and teachers. The teacher audience that we really focused in on right now are your professional learning specialists who work in every building. They've helped us revise our supports to make meaning for teachers. Our building level principals have helped us create structures around what their needs are next year to help implement in buildings. And this is going to be an ongoing process for the next several months, because we want to make sure that next year, in our year of transition, we want to make sure that we provide enough supports for schools in implementing these new standards. The final year is really the year of implementation, which is 2021, and that's the expectation from the state to release their first round of testing, which is going to be really aligned to that new assessment. So you've got new standards and new assessment coming out 2021, so we're preparing for that time. The curriculum framework that we're really coming up with right now is to help people provide clarity to not only understand what's in the standards, but also understand how that applies to their classroom. Our curriculum is going to start and end with the Colorado Academic Standards, but it's about providing people resources to help them understand those more clearly, to truly understand the content and the scope and sequence of those standards. Nancy, do you want to touch on MTSS?
Thank you very much. So it's important in curriculum frameworks that we have tiered frameworks embedded. Colorado and Douglas County have adopted the MTSS model for those frameworks. And it's important that clear academic expectations are present for all students, and that those expectations are supported with appropriate curriculum and programming that matches student need, that is differentiated for students depending on what they need.
Was it? So board, so first of all, thank you. How incredible it is in about a 25-minute shot to hear all the incredible things that are happening in our 3 areas that we prioritize. So I just want to, first of all, just thank you and applaud you and give you a wow. Board, our questions, though, tonight really are in terms of the interpretation. Remember, we're really focused on the what. And so the question we should really be asking ourselves, based on the things that they have highlighted, the things that they're focused on, have they nailed it? Have they actually interpreted correctly the what that we've defined? So we can always go in more in depth on any of these things at a later time in later work sessions or whatnot. So I don't want us to spend a lot of time getting into the nitty gritty, but I guess the question I would ask, and if any of you have questions about that, is the interpretation piece. Are they focused on the right stuff? Any questions, comments?
Thank you, guys. It's very exciting to hear the actual plans for our goals, and I really appreciate it. So the one question I have, just in terms of the interpretation of the first goal, quality educators and staff, recruited, developed, supported, retained, and celebrated, is how communication fits into that. And accessibility, just communication and accessibility, and I think it kind of falls under support. You talked about it a little bit. So.
Well, overall, I think it's important for all of our employees to know that we want to ensure that their voices are heard for whatever their needs are, whether it's an HR-related matter or an IT-related matter or a question in relation to their pay. And so we'll have more conversation as a cabinet, but we want to we'll expand upon ways in which employees can ensure that they know how to reach out and be heard and have their questions answered and needs met. In HR, I can say that we will continue to be available to answer questions in relation to anything that they need that pertains to their employment and other needs that they have. As always, in terms of communication, here's one example. Employee Counsel will be communicating out regularly to our staff regarding the items that we're covering, having access to minutes and seeing the work that we're doing in similar fashion to some other district level committees that we have as well. Team, is there anything else you want to add in relation to communication?
Thanks everybody for all this fantastic stuff. My question is around on the communications piece on the celebration. So the focus on the celebration is, at least the way it was explained and the way it reads, is more internal. We have a lot to celebrate externally out to our community. And I just would love to understand what are some things that can be done or we're going to be doing around that to showcase in the community, especially around things like the work that Rich's team is doing, so they know what's going on and we're telling a story to the greater community.
So in terms of celebrating, definitely want to expand on that. When my team puts together videos and stories, we push those out on social media and in our newsletters. We also get that out. We also post photos from our board recognitions, for example. And then during Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, we really blitz it out on social media, specific highlights of staff. But yes, would love to focus even more time on telling those great stories via social media, email, and the web. Am I missing anything?
No, and then there's other informal ways, but kind of a formal way in terms of celebrating the great things that we do in Douglas County. For example, we're hosting our CASPA Job Fair. What a great way to get inside the doors of our district, to see a great school, to meet some of our fabulous administrators and have the opportunity to come to our wonderful district.
Again, thank you very much for the wonderful work in this 4-page of documentations. It shows how much you understand what the board is trying to accomplish. I have a question related to 1B. CTE education has become more and more in the front of a lot of our counties, people's mind. What I mean is the career tech educations. So in 1B, how can we specifically measure that and make sure that our CTE programs has academically success in terms of training people after graduate from high school, they're ready to go to work. Currently, what I see in there doesn't seem like it's more still focused on the academic testing for college-bound student. So the second things that I want to comment on is about 2A. I know that the TEL survey or TLCC does give a very good indications about a particular school or building's accomplishment and how much they like a particular school. However, the one thing that I think we miss, which we did have before, is measure about how people feel about the district as a whole, which the TLCC or TEL survey do not capture. And I think it is fair for our employee to have a feedback about how we, the board, are doing or the administrators are doing. I think that feedback loop is very critical. And I, as Director Lemieux said that, the survey that we did before did measure that, which I don't think in the past 10 years, we do a very good job of capturing the sentiment.
I I just wanted to speak to the CTE part. I think that that's really important, but I think that that's one of the sub-ends that we have, but it's not what we've prioritized here. So I don't know that it necessarily, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't say that it necessarily fits with this sub-end.
I'm going to wrap this up, yes, and we'll delve more into and give Stacy and Amanda more opportunity to talk with the whole notion of a systematic way, Director Lung, of making sure we're assessing how our community's feeling. I've heard that theme a couple times mentioned in terms of how are we getting staff satisfaction in a systemic way and how are we getting communities in a systemic way as well. And I appreciate what Director Vogel has said too, is I think the CTE really falls in another in statement or sub-in, so we'll put that on hold as well for now. And Dr. Tucker, final words, and then we'll wrap up.
First and foremost, I want to thank the directors for giving us this opportunity to address academic stuff. That's our job. That's what the community expects of us in terms of making the Douglas County School District the most effective school district in America by ensuring that each student is college, career, and life ready. Tomorrow I will be talking at Arapahoe Community College and that whole network that we have we've partnered with about the Douglas County School District and about CT. It'll be a huge topic. So if you have some free time tomorrow, please stop by. I can give you some details after this. And lastly, when we start to talk about culture and climate, we know that's huge, top on the totem pole here for this board, and that will be really, really explored with our strategic planning process.